We're going to kick off with a great discussion. I want to welcome to the stage Winston Binch. He's the Chief Digital Officer of Deutsch North America, and Catharine Hayes. She's the Executive Director of the Wharton Future of Advertising Program. Together, they're going to examine the potential that AI can bring to the creative enterprise and what marketing leaders, creatives, and technologists have to look forward to. Please welcome Winston and Catharine.
Good morning. So great to be here in LA from the very cold, rainy, and disgusting East Coast, but we love it. So we're going to be talking today about the intersection of the future of creative and AI. And what I hoped that we could do in this first session is just to kind of ground us in some of the most fundamental notions so that you kind of have that as a backdrop for listening throughout the day. One of the things I want to ask you to do, it's just a suggestion, is on your name tags, on one side, on the left-hand side, write down the 3 things that you're an expert in. What are things that you know about that others can learn from? And on the other side, maybe with question marks next to them, what are the 3 things that you're interested in learning more about? Because on the stage, you're going to hear an amazing array of presenters, but obviously during the breaks, there's so much, as we know at the Wharton School, you learn just as much from your peers as you do from the people who are presenting, so I encourage you to do that. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. Welcome.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. So what I thought we would do is just ask Winston to give us a little bit of, just a very brief frame of reference for his remarks today and what he's going to be talking about. So what as Chief Digital Officer and the winner of just an insane amount of awards at the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity, among other things, tell us a little bit about what's going on with creativity and AI at Deutsch in terms of how you all are thinking about it.
Well, I mean, there's nothing we're more excited about, really. I mean, I think that if you back up, I've been doing digital for a long time now, really since the beginning. And when the sharing economy launched, right, Facebook and YouTube, it was an amazing time for storytelling and content, and it has been. But for interactive marketing, it wasn't so good. We really lost canvases, right? We weren't making brand microsites anymore. And the promise of interactive marketing was always consumer engagement and interaction. And the more customers spend time with a brand or an experience, the more it's top of mind. And content, as much as all of us loves great stories, it's disposable in a lot of ways, right? You have to create a ton of it and keep moving. With interactive marketing, you could create experiences, and e-commerce experiences as well, that kind of serve as long-term platforms. And the promise, and AI is such a broad topic. We're going to talk a lot about different types of AI today, right? And there's machine learning and tons of other things. And it's also an old field. It started in 1956, so it's not a new thing. But what I think now is hardware and software come together and allowing us to create really rich, dynamic, engaging experiences that also can be functional and serve as long-term engagement platforms for brands. So that's kind of what I'm excited about, is the emotional and the functional coming together. And these are ads that can live over time. And that's something, again, that we lost through social. And now I feel like it's a great moment for us as marketers to create these platforms that can really, have a lot of emotion to them, but also be very service-oriented.
So how are you structured at Deutsch to tackle this intersection of AI and creativity?
Well, years ago, we brought engineering and technology in-house. So we have 40 engineers.
40
that work at the agency. And over time, the obsession in 2008 was mobile apps, right? And then after that, I think engineers were really looking for that next thing. And the AI economy is that. So a lot of our engineers, Sabri is here, and he's going to speak, was one of them, we're really starting to dig into these technologies. And then we saw an escalation with Facebook and just bots coming of age. And so what we started doing 4 years ago is really, again, starting working more in this space. And then last year we launched a new service called Great Machine that was solely focused on bringing creativity and humanity to AI technologies for brands. And I think that's a big thing. Marla talked about it. A lot of what you hear around AI and brand and marketing right now is all about predictive analytics smarter and more dynamic media, and data and data and data. And all of those things are super relevant and important, but what we're really interested in is AI without personality, without charisma, without humanity is just code and numbers.
So I want to get into that a little bit more, but I know just in terms of the research that we've done at the Wharton Future of Advertising program, when we really looked to what the future was, a couple years back, it was sort of this antagonism between creatives and the data geeks. And it's like, don't tell me what to do. I'm a creative, I know, and my gut, da, da, da. And obviously that's kind of gone away, and that's really come together. But the two other elements of it, this notion of design, when you're getting into creative experiences, as well as the operationalization of it that enables the entire entity to be able to listen and respond, it seems like that diamond of those four disciplines coming together is really where it is. So talk about that intersection between creatives and those who are AI experts, and how are you seeing, what are the challenges that are happening? What's the friction that's happening at that intersection? And what are the sort of the exciting opportunities that are starting to emerge?
Yeah. Well, we always joke it's kind of like high school. You know, it's like the jocks and the geeks. It's left and right brain. There is like a big difference.
So you really do see a difference?
Well, that is. It's just a different type of thinking, right? And but you know what we found, and you know, Pixar has been a company we've looked at and envied for years, and I've said this before, but we had Oren Jacobs, the former CTO, in here doing a talk, and you know, I asked him, I said, how do you guys make it work? I mean, you're bringing technologists and creative people together, and he said, oh, it's a shit show. So I felt much better. You know, the reality is it comes down to personalities and castings, and I think it starts at the top of your organization, is that you have to really, you know, lead by example, and we've done that here. And you know, it's creativity. We look at creativity as technology, as design, as storytelling, and we don't make a distinction. It's not production. And you know, and again, then it's about inviting the right people to the table and empowering them, making it a safe place to have ideas. You know, we say there are no bad ideas, and that has been, you know, and it's taken time. It's not easy, like I've said, but
I think that's an important point that I have seen too in talking with marketers and people across the field, that there's so much more conversation around it right now, but it's still really hard. It's still not there yet in many ways, right?
And it's really difficult. And then what you try and do is it's a small teams always work best in this space and in any kind of innovation space. And then you race to try and get to case studies and ideas that, once you've built them, can be, you know, really example and proof for the rest of your organization and your client organizations that this is how you do it, and also it's an exciting thing to be part of.
You know, one thing about case studies, and it's so funny, you and I have talked about case studies for years and the importance of it to help, and one of the things that people come to us for is not like just the fun stuff that happens at the end and the successes, but the challenges that happen along the way and actually making it happen. So what are some of the things that you've learned from those case studies that you're putting out now that have just happened in the last 12 to 18 months that really should inform the next 6 to 12 months, you know, long term?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the space moves so fast, right?
Right.
I mean, it feels like 6 months ago we were really obsessing over bots, particularly in Facebook and Messenger. And we're still doing that, but voice-driven devices and technology and creative is fast taking over. You know, there's expected to be 30 million voice-driven devices in homes this year, and we're seeing more and more projects emerge, really, that are, you know, focused in helping brands create a voice strategy. And I find it really fascinating, and actually I was up in Amazon last week and learned a ton. It's a complete paradigm shift in how we think about marketing and commerce, right? So, you know, if you work with Amazon, they have something called the golden utterance. And really, golden utterance is the term or the word that you use to get Alexa to do something. And it has to be really simple, and it has to be, we call it like a sticky name. And so if you think about products, and if people are going to be using these devices to order products online, you know, a lot of companies have really complicated product SKUs. And you're not going to say, like, this long, remember a long product SKU. And so now we have to think about changing how we even name our products. And then also what I think is interesting is that, you know, if we remember, we used to put URLs on commercials, right? At the end of it, it's like, go to
Right.
this.com.
www.http.
Right, but now we're going to move to a world where the golden utterance is the new URL. And so this has like massive, implications for not only us in this room as, creative and technology people, but also product and merchandising.
Yeah, so I was hosting AdTech last week in New York City, and one of the topics that really came through loudly and clearly are those companies, those brands who have already had those sort of oral branding, like Jeopardy, right? Nah, nah, any of those sorts of things, or like Intel Inside, or that they have a real leg up now because they've invested in that branding, and so they're now able to use it on this new platform. Which, to your point, there's just so much. Honing in on how important it is. So with that, let's just keep in that space for a while, because obviously all of this is powered by AI and creativity. But if you think about AI and creativity in the oral space, you mentioned it before. So much of what I heard before and what we're hearing generally is the essential aspect of humanizing all of this, and how important it is not only to be able to have listening devices, but also understanding. And so where are you? Where do you see the intersection between creative storytellers and the technologists, the AI capabilities coming together on that?
Well, it really is a dance. It's kind of, I always say innovation is like jazz, and it requires a lot of listening. And when one of the projects we worked on for Taco Bell is Taco Bot, which was the first bot on Slack that helped you, group order tacos. And really fun, and the brand's super innovative and lets us take a lot of chances and create experiments. But that was really a dance between the technologist and the writer. And what's really exciting if you are a writer or creative is that, again, it's like a Renaissance moment. I mean, we're really moving into this era of conversational creativity, where it's really developing long-term dialogues and, that are dynamic. Where the technology comes in is that it has to get smarter. It takes time and a lot of experimentation. The other thing is, we're creating these experiences on the behalf of brands. So there's also a legal component. You can't just say anything. So again, we're just starting to learn, but it really is trial by error and by doing. And so the faster, I really encourage brands to start experimenting with these technologies now. And the great thing is, it's not a ton of money, because, let's go back to Subservient Chicken, which was in 2003, which really was a crude example of AI. And it took a lot of hours to code. But now we can do those type of experiences in a quarter of the time.
If that.
Yeah.
And so you do see sort of humanism and storytelling at the core of it. And again, especially as we think about assistance, or if we go, the notion of beyond advertising or the post-advertising world, which is about interactions between brands and people, not consumers, people, not beyond somebody who just consumes your product and service, as this opportunity to co-create value, to have a value exchange so that people are willing to provide the kind of information on a selective basis to customize according to what it is that you're thinking about. So how do you, when you're talking with your teams, just like a brief couple of ideas about how do you instill that notion of people first so that the technology doesn't sort of run away with things?
Well, I mean, I think you have to, one thing I learned at Amazon too is that actually people my age, we're used to commanding computers what to do. And if you think about how you talk to Alexa, it's like, Alexa, do this. Children treat it like a friend, which that is the shift. And I think as we create experiences, we have to think more of that, right? That relationship. And then the other thing is the cognitive load, right? When you're creating voice-driven devices, it's much more than you think. Like in the experiences that are
Cognitive
working,
load
meaning that people don't want to be interviewed by these devices. Right. It's like you can't create a super long or complex experience. Now the BBC just launched a interactive storytelling experience called the Inspection Chamber, which I haven't checked out yet, but it just launched, which allows users to kind of guide the story, but still they have to be simple human interactions. And I think it comes back to, great marketing too. The more colloquial you are, the better. People just have a natural aversion to being sold to and advertised to, and I think if you really have a great human tone of voice and a personality to it that matches your brand, which is important as well, you're going to have more luck.
There was somebody from Born at the conference last week, and that's what they talked about, was that the real breakthrough to go from sort of a machine to the concept of an agent, somebody who's really helping, is this notion of trust. And therefore, it's the application of AI to really understand intent, because you know how annoying it is when you start screaming at Siri or Alexa because they're like, no, that's not what I meant. And really what you're trying to do is to get them to, understand you, so to speak. And so what they're saying, I think the notion is until it gets to that point, until there's that notion of sort of empathy, if you will, and then the natural language to respond, it's going to be there. So we're certainly just at the forefront of it. So I want to just ask one more question, then I want to open it up to all of you to ask Winston some questions as well. So let's talk about the responsibility side. And I know you and I have had lots of discussions about it, and I know Chick and I have, and there are a lot of wonderful efforts underway. How do we get individuals to take personal responsibility at this very early stage for what it is that they're creating?
Yeah. Well, I went to an AI conference in Boston in the spring, and one thing I found fascinating is that I think we all think about the future in AI and just job replacement, that robots are going to take all of our jobs, but we should be thinking about it a different way, is that they're going to AI is going to create new job markets. And one area that's big, tell your kids to study humanities and ethics, because the ethics component is going to be a big component, right? And there's this idea of ethical engineering that's emerging. And I actually think as we think about agencies, so there's this kind of renaissance for writing and creativity and tech, but there's also the strategy and planning disciplines. There's a huge white space for them to really help us navigate the ethics of these experiences that we're creating and making sure they're humane, right?
And also again, one with the brand, right? So that they're
absolutely, and that's kind of the structure where, as we work in this area, we always start with brand purpose, and then we move into what we call brand character, right? So it's making sure that character that we develop really ladders back to the brand and represents all the great values that some of our
in all touch points. I think that's the other thing too that is so critical, is to think beyond advertising to all those different interactions among it. All right, well, I have about 50 more questions, but I'm going to stop and turn it over to you all. What kind of questions do you have for Winston on the topic that we can get to? I know we've got some. Okay, good. I'll keep going then. So the other thing that Marla talked about at the very beginning is this notion of curiosity. How do you think that comes in, and how do you think, in terms of throughout the day, the balance between curiosity and getting to it and actual outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, I always say I'm not an expert, but an explorer. I don't, I think that term expert is just overused.
Yeah,
and I think that particularly in this space, Sabri is close to an expert, but I mean, he's been doing this longer. But all of us, you have to have an open mind and be willing to kind of look foolish in a way, because none of us know where this space is going to go, and you only learn by doing. So, I think have the courage to ask, as many questions as possible. Get your hands dirty. Try writing dialogue for Alexa and Google. I mean, I've done that, and it's just a really interesting experiment. And that's what I think is so exciting about this space. It feels like the dawn of the web. When I first got in this business, there were no rules. We were inventing them. And I think as marketers, we're in that same type of environment now. And I think we're going to see so much innovation come through, with driven by a lot of people in this room.
No question. Any other questions? Okay, my final one is about, you mentioned marketers. So as we think about serving marketers and serving their budgets, any things that you've seen about the marketers who are really leaning into this, and what characterizes them and what's holding them back in the next 30 seconds?
Well, there are not that many. I mean, there's a handful that are investing, and I think we need more. And the ones that tend to be really have know the importance of innovation to drive their business. And we all know, and everyone wants to invent and innovate. It's hard to find room for it. It's risky. And I think the ones that are doing it are smart in realizing that you can get quick wins, not very expensively. And I think it just takes a kind of brave mindset, a brave and bold client that really wants to break through.
Sounds good. Well, I want us to all be those brave people and responsible. So thank you so much. Thanks, Winston.
Thanks all.